Hi, I'm Cheryl Benadie, the Wholeness Guide. And in today's video, I'll be covering a very sensitive topic, and that's how to recognize the signs of spiritual abuse. Now, even as I say that phrase, spiritual abuse, it's something that maybe makes you want to cringe or look away because it's very difficult to talk about spiritual abuse in our culture and society. But that's exactly why I'm doing this video. In my book, The Wholeness Revolution, I share various examples of abuses that I've suffered in my life. Being a witness to domestic violence predisposed me to being a victim of gender-based violence in other areas of my life. I experienced sexual violence, I experienced intimate partner violence, and those experiences really stole my voice and crippled me as I entered into the world of work. And in my late 20s, I went to a church that seemed like the right answer. It seemed like everything I was looking for. And I think you can tell because I'm doing this video that it wasn't. So in all of the abuses that I suffered in my life, I count spiritual abuse as being the worst violation that you can do to someone, because God, who is our creator, is the one who knows the truth about us. And so if someone violates that, if someone tarnishes that, if someone corrupts that reality, it's so challenging and difficult to heal from that and to find our way back to our faith and back to God. And so that's why I'm doing this video today. So if you have experienced spiritual abuse, or you think you might be experiencing spiritual abuse, then this video is for you. So stay tuned. I'm doing this video today to help anyone who has experienced spiritual abuse and is still kind of feeling stuck or very devastated and not knowing how to rebuild their lives. Or perhaps if you're watching this today, you could be experiencing spiritual abuse and you know there's something wrong and you're feeling very anxious, but you're just not sure what is going on. So I hope that this video will bring you some illumination. I want to go through the reasons of why I'm doing this video at the outset, because I am going to be talking about someone who existed in the world and a organization that currently exists. And so my real purpose with this is to help people to get free from environments where there's control and abuse. Number one, because I know the pain of spiritual abuse. Like I shared, it is the worst form of abuse that you can give anybody, because that can devastate your relationship with God, who is the one who can rebuild your life. Number two, I'm doing this video and we'll do other materials and information because I want to create the information and guidelines and just even someone sharing their own story to help me realize that I wasn't crazy. Because when you are in a cult or a controlling environment, there's a lot of gaslighting that happens. And so you don't know what's real anymore. And if I just had more information, because obviously I did search for that, of people who were in cults, I could have really seen the reality much sooner. And essentially, I want to help people who experience this to realize that you can heal and you can become whole again, because I'm all about wholeness. My book that I published last year, The Wholeness Revolution, Living Beyond the Pain and Reclaiming Your Power, is essentially a memoir of my life where I share my story of growing up in South Africa, and I experienced many forms of abuse. So growing up, I witnessed domestic violence, and that predisposed me for other forms of gender-based violence. And like I shared in the introduction, the spiritual abuse is the worst kind of abuse that I've suffered. So in the recent news, there was news of a passing of Sir Medley. He passed away last year, August, on the 15th of August. And at the time of recording this video, it would be 5 months that he has not yet been buried. Now, that is obviously weird. It's not normal for someone who passes away to not be buried. And so there's been a lot of speculation and a lot of social media questions, but there's been no response from the family. And that makes me sad for a number of reasons. Number one, because I know the family and there's real loss that's been suffered. And number two, because there's a mockery of faith circles. And that's something that I want to address in the video today. So let's look at what are the signs of occult, because the sad reality is that there isn't a big warning sign when you enter into the doors of occult. What you will experience when you walk into a cult is something that is called love bombing. So you're welcomed in and you are made to feel really special and you're made to feel like part of the family. And so something else I have to talk about here is that when I encountered this family, when I encountered this church, I was in a very vulnerable place in my own life. I was really hurting. I was searching for truth. And so most likely, if you are in a cultic environment, there was something in you that was looking for belonging. And that's a normal thing for us to do as human beings. Faith is meant to help us to connect to the reality of a creator that is unconditionally loving and full of grace. So when you enter in, you first feel like, oh, wow, this is what I've been looking for. And this is amazing. They talk about a special knowledge that they have. So often what the pastor would say was, you have been taught incorrectly in other churches. I'm going to teach you the right way. And you feel like you've been given a special knowledge that other people don't have. So there's this kind of exclusivity that you are now part of. Only over time do you start seeing that there's really no accountability. So what is important for you to do as a member is not that important for the leadership to do as well. So there's a lot of hypocrisy and double standards, but you are made to feel like you're the one that has to keep raising your standard because you're not measuring up. And so over time, that really builds an environment of fear and control. What started out really on a high, slowly but surely begins to feel like quicksand, because no matter how much you try to be good, no matter how much you try to be at all the services and do all the things and give money until it hurts, it's never good enough. So there's always something missing. And there is that emphasis on money. So most of the messages will be around giving and why you should give and giving more and you're not giving enough and all of these things around money that is not in proper balance when it comes to a healthy biblical model. You'll also have a lot of sensational experiences. So it's more emotive, it's more emotional. It's less like making sense of actually studying the word properly. It's more people falling down and having experiences. And so you think, I have to get the next high, but you actually haven't read your Bible in weeks. So that's something that happens slowly over time. The other thing that begins to happen is that you suddenly realize that you're spending all of your time in church. Whenever you would ask the pastor for advice, he would tell you, spend more time in church, be more in church. So again, that thing of chasing the carrots, God will only bless you if you are being a better leader. God will only bless you if you give more. There's always a condition to God blessing you. Over time, they also isolate you from friends and family. So this church is special. Don't let anybody speak bad about us. You have to protect our reputation with other people. And so you begin to feel like you are being covered in this cocoon where only you and the cult members live. And it feels like, they need to get things right. They have to get their lives right. They're missing out on this special thing that you have. And then people who do start noticing the discrepancies and do finally have the courage to leave, and it is difficult to leave because they will give you stories of what could happen if you leave. People could die. There could be devastating consequences of you leaving. And so when people finally have the courage to leave, they are ostracized, they are cursed. You're told not to associate with them, not to speak to them. There were some really horrible things that happened, really horrible things that were said. But because of the context of you believing this person's persona and that they have a special link to God that you are needing and you are privy to because you're now in this special inner circle, you kind of overlook that because it seems justified the way that they pitch that to you. There's also no financial accountability. So we don't know what happens with the finances. We don't know what happens with the giving. There's no annual reports are kind of like, this is where the money's went and no clear evidence of what's happened with the money. And over time, you have a growing sense of guilt and shame because you keep trying to climb this ladder, you keep trying to get this blessing. There's a lot of emphasis on like prophecy and God doing this and this and this and this. And over time, you feel like there's something deeply wrong with you because other people are getting blessed and you aren't. And eventually you have this feeling of being trapped. And it's very devastating. You might still be going to work, but you also aren't able to focus on your work because there's all these other things that have been taking up your time and energy. Most of your weekends, most of your weeknights are in church. And so you really are out of balance and tired. And when someone is kind of at that point of burnout, you can't function properly, you can't think clearly. And that's why it's easy for them to control you if you are in a state of being worn down. So to try and offset some of those very hectic realities of being in a cult, I want to talk about some signs of a healthy community. And they do exist. I didn't think that they did, but they do. So these are signs of when you know that your faith group is healthy. Number one, the emphasis is on helping you to grow in spiritual maturity. So the whole focus is on, are you growing? Are you getting an understanding of the word? How are you doing in your discipleship process? Where are you at? How can we pray for you? How can we minister to you? Whereas in the unhealthy church communities, the focus is on how can you help the leadership with their mission to make more money. A healthy faith group gives you balanced biblical teaching. They look at all areas of your life and help you to grow in those areas of your life. Leaders there are consistent and very accountable. They are also able to admit when they've done something wrong. This is a big sign to look out for. If leadership cannot admit that they've done something wrong and they are able to, they're not able to say that I'm also learning, I'm also growing, and being vulnerable, that's a big warning sign if they aren't able to be vulnerable and accountable. In healthy faith communities, you can leave at any time. There is no curse or pressure put on you if you decide to leave. There's a blessing if you leave. They wish you well. They trust that God has got your back, and you're free to go, and you're free to come back. There's a freedom there. You're not feeling trapped. You're also able to participate in the activities of the church, but you aren't pressured to do so. There's an invitation and not a demand placed on you. Another sign, some other signs of healthy faith communities is the picture that you have of God is getting clearer and clearer. So your relationship with God is growing. In an unhealthy place, if it was a cult, you begin to feel more and more distant from God. You can't remember the last time you actually heard God for yourself or read the Bible for yourself, because the cult leaders have taken over that position in your life, which is a very scary thing. A healthy faith group is when you're able to connect to other members in a healthy way. When you leave a cult, the people that said were your friends never contact you, never see them again. But here you are building healthy, lasting relationships where you don't need the other person. You can love the other person, learn from them, and grow together. Your faith group is healthy when there's financial stewardship taught without demand or pressure to give. So you are enlightened on the benefits of partnership and supporting missions and doing all of these things, but there's no pressure. No one's checking if you gave your tithes. No one's checking why haven't you given. No, there's no offering kind of like pressure to give all the time. It is definitely an environment of grace and of love. You're able to actually share some of your deepest struggles because you don't feel shame, and you can actually grow from that. And the final sign of a healthy faith community is when you are continually growing in freedom and wholeness. Like you can actually see from the time you started to where you are now, there's been positive growth. And you can see that you've become more free in certain areas of your life. Whereas if you've been in a cult or an unhealthy community, you feel very stagnant and stuck. And actually you feel like you've regressed in your relationship with God. So these are some signs of unhealthy and healthy church communities. And this is something I really want to focus on in this video, is the stages of healing. Because there aren't that many resources available for people who have experienced spiritual abuse. So I'm going to help to build some of those. But it can have a devastating effect. I've seen some of the people that were in that church, and they kind of have lost their passion for God. They feel very confused by what's happened. They kind of wonder, why did God allow that? He didn't, by the way. So there's definitely hope for healing. And so why I want to go through these stages of healing is because you are not alone in what you are experiencing. So the first thing you're going to understand or to face once you actually recognize, oh my word, my church is a cult, or my faith group is a cult. It's not just Christian groups that are cultic. There are also other religious groups that have cultic tendencies. I can only speak of what I've experienced. So when you come to this reality, oh my word, these people were wolves in sheep's clothing, it is so hard to believe, because even though Matthew 7 says, beware of the false prophets, they will come to you dressed as sheep, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You don't think you're going to meet them in real life, so this is the danger of cults. And I see so many characteristics of cults and people who are going through spiritual abuse, and it makes me angry. It really makes me so angry, because I know the pain of that. I know how that person's life is feeling very disconnected and fragmented, and like there's no forward movement, because that's what a cult does. It makes you feel like you're stuck in a moment, that you are worthless, that you are just a number to them. And when you can't give finances or time, then you are useless to them. So that is very shocking, because you believed that you were loved. You believed that you were important to them. You believe that you were part of their community. So when you realize that you are dispensable, that is very painful. That is very hurtful. One thing that you can realize in this time of healing is that it's never good to make another person proxy to our own relationship with God. Never make somebody else your idol when God is there to fulfill that purpose. The second stage of healing you are going to experience is the guilt and shame of it. Because you're asking yourself these questions: how could I have been so stupid? I've wasted years of my life. Who has it been a cult, right? I was speaking to someone about sharing their experiences, and they said to me, Cheryl, I can't talk about this with you, because if I have to admit that this was a cult, what does it say about me? And I thought it was a good question, because this is the hardest thing to experience. We think only stupid people end up in a cult. And I've done some research on cults, and you know what? It's not stupid people. It's just people, people who are looking for something to believe in, people who are looking for a place of belonging, people who are genuine about wanting to grow and be involved in a faith community. So if you are feeling guilt and shame, I just want to say to you, you are not stupid. Okay, it's not your fault that it happened. There may have been some underlying factors, like in my own life, I was still healing from previous abuse. I was still very raw, in a sense of I didn't have my own identity. I didn't have my own voice. I couldn't speak up. In those years of actually being in the cult, I started reading books like Approval Addiction. Like, what is going on? Why can't I say no? Why can't I use my voice? And actually, after I left, I went into counseling, because it really helped me to put into context of the stuff that happened, for me to realize that I don't have to live like a victim. It happened to me. There's a reality. There's wolves out there, but God didn't do that to me. That was the biggest thing. What it was not him who caused me to be there or caused me to be hurt. That's not his nature. So that's what I also want to share with you today, is that a cult leader is not a true reflection of God. It is an apparition of God, but he or she is not a true reflection of God at all. So please hear that very clearly. The third stage you might go through in your healing process is anger and denial. So after you get really sad, you get really mad. And this is what I experienced for, I don't know, maybe months or years. I would drive past that building and I would feel my entire body just shaking with anger, because they stole 3.5 years of my life. So the anger is very real. I still feel that anger a little bit, as you can tell. How could you let this happen, God? Don't you care? Those are the questions that I asked. And thanks to a healthy faith community that I'm now in, I can understand that he didn't let that happen. It's not his will for that to happen. In fact, God was trying to speak to me while I was there. When I first met him, there was something that didn't feel right, but I overrode that feeling because I didn't trust myself. So there's many ways that God is trying to speak to you about what's real and who he really is. So in this anger process and in the denial process, it's a normal part of it because your mind is trying to make sense of it. And what happens after the anger stage and the denial phase is what I call the pendulum. Okay. So in this phase, you are trying to figure out what is real now, because it feels like everything that you believed in for so long is just up for review. Okay. So me being this good Christian girl, after the cult and in the process of my counseling, I just kind of pendulumed. I was like, I'm going to be really good at being a bad girl. I tried to be a bad girl and go against all of these things that I felt was, part of my makeup or my faith, my faith construct. And the turning point for me, which is a really beautiful story, was I was crying in my bed one night because the pendulum was not working for me. It was just making me more miserable. And I really felt God say to me in that moment, when there was no pastor, no cult leader, nobody else, God said, I will turn your tears into roses. And that was my moment of God is real. He cares about me. No one else was there that night. You were not there. He was there for me. And so that for me was my turning point of, okay, I need to go back to my faith community. I need to see God for who he really is. And that's what then started the acceptance and the healing process. I actually met someone in a Bible study who then became my husband. And we went through lots of different lessons about God. And I was like, I've been Christian for many years. Why didn't anyone tell me that God was good? So that's another video. But reestablishing your relationship with God and taking ownership of your life is part of this process. And when you do start trying to get back into healthy community, give yourself some time, because there's going to be things that maybe make you feel fearful. You might not want to get too involved in the beginning because it feels like you're going down this like slippery slope again. You don't want to end up being hurt. I was lucky, I'm still lucky to have a faith community that was patient and understanding and supportive and allowed me to go at my own pace, to say, there's no pressure. God loves you, just receive, grow, it's fine, and it took me a very long time again to say, okay, whatever I'm doing from a place of I want to do it. I'm not doing it from a place of I have to do it. And so I'm definitely in a healthier place now. So the final part of the video I want to share is, how do you then help build a healthy community? We need more of these in the world because there's a lot of cults out there. So how do we step out of victimhood and help to build these healthy communities? So firstly, assess, is this new community that I'm joining a healthy community? Go back to the section where I spoke about the signs of a healthy community and get to know the leadership. Ask questions, watch out for the red flags, and take it slow. I kept asking the question of these leaders of the church I'm currently in. And it took me a while to trust that, okay, these people are the real deal. They really love God. They're not after money. They really are on a mission. And it's a mission I want to be part of. So awesome. But it took me a while to get to that point. And then how can I participate in growing this community? So vulnerability and trust are essential in participating in and growing the kind of community that you want to be part of. I want to be part of a community where we can have dinners on a weekend, where we can do things together, where we can share in our faith together and grow from each other. We're not perfect. There's no perfect church, by the way. There's no perfect people. We are growing together. So I want to be part of that. So I have to help build that. Another question you can ask yourself is, how am I becoming disciplined in growing my own relationship with God? I remember my husband and I went to speak to a couple that had been in the cult, and my husband asked them, if you could tell people advice on how not to be in a cult, what would you say? And almost immediately our friend said, read the Bible for yourself. Read the Bible for yourself and know what God is saying to you. That's how you would not be in a cult. So I thought that was great advice. So read the Bible for yourself, know what God is saying to you, build those habits and practices of being with God, because he's always speaking to you. So take time to listen and not just only try and get answers from people who are leaders, but hear from God yourself and then bring that learning to your community as well. I think that's very important. And then ask yourself, how can I serve others in this community? So where a cult is a total dependency on the church leaders, they need you to not read your Bible. They need you to believe everything that they're saying. They need you to just follow them blindly, because that's what helps them to serve their purposes. But a healthy faith community needs you to be interdependent. They need you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. Of course, you have to engage, and when you are going through a challenge, talk about it. But there's a healthy interdependency. It says, if you're not available to pray with me right now, I can actually pray on my own. I can pray for somebody else. That's what healthy relationships in general, not just in faith communities, are about. So how do I become intentional about growing my relationship with the leaders in my church or faith community and other members of the community? How can I be part of the solution, even though I experienced the horrible reality of a cult? So, you know what? This was such a scary video for me to do, because I know that there might be repercussions. I know that people will watch this video who knew the pastor and have lots to say. You know what? You're welcome to comment below. Say your say. It's fine. It's a free world. I did this video because I want you to know that if you were in that church, for example, and you're trying to get out of that church, or any other church or faith community that's not Christian, that feels like a cult, you are not crazy. You can heal from spiritual abuse, and you can become stronger in spite of what you've experienced. So know that you are not alone and that there's hope for healing. Okay, so I did the video. It's very scary, but please let me know if this video has helped you in some way. If you are experiencing spiritual abuse and you feel fearful about leaving, it's almost the same fear of leaving an abusive partner, because they make you feel so dependent on them and so unable to operate outside of their world that you doubt yourself. So if that you are doubting yourself, know that you can. You did operate your life before you joined this organization, and you can definitely operate your life healthily and in a full way outside of this organization. Okay, so if I can get out of a cult and live to tell the tale, then so can you.